Not every angel has wings. Sometimes they drive black SUVs and know exactly how to inspire young minds with words of hope and determination. But Sarah Thompson didn't know any of this on that rainy Chicago night when her old Honda broke down, and a tall stranger named Barry stopped to help. She just knew she needed to get to her daughter. She had no way of knowing that this simple act of kindness would change their lives forever, or that the quiet man who gave them a ride would turn out to be the 44th President of the United States. This is the story of how Barack Obama became a guardian angel to a single mom and her education-loving daughter, and why he waited 3 years to reveal who he really was. Sarah Thompson's fingers drummed nervously on the steering wheel as she drove through the heavy rain. Her old Honda made a weird clicking sound that seemed to get louder with each passing minute. The dashboard clock read 11:42 p.m. And she was still 20 minutes away from picking up Emily from the babysitter's house. "Please just hold together," she whispered to her car. "Just a little longer." The windshield wipers squeaked back and forth, fighting against the downpour. Sarah had meant to replace them months ago, but between her job at the diner and her evening shifts at the grocery store, there never seemed to be enough time or money for car repairs. Lightning flashed across the dark sky, illuminating the empty road ahead. She was taking the back route home, the one that cut through the quieter suburbs outside Chicago. It saved 10 minutes and a little gas, which meant a lot when every dollar counted. The car shuddered. Sarah's heart jumped as the engine made a horrible grinding noise. No, no, no. She pressed the gas pedal, but the car only wheezed in response. The speedometer needle dropped steadily, 40, 30, 20 miles per hour. Warning lights blinked on the dashboard like angry red eyes. Sarah managed to guide the dying car to the shoulder of the road before it gave one final shudder and went silent. She turned the key in the ignition over and over, but nothing happened, not even a click. "This can't be happening," she muttered, reaching for her phone. Her stomach dropped when she saw the black screen. The battery had died hours ago during her grocery store shift, and she hadn't had a chance to charge it. Rain hammered against the roof of the car as Sarah rested her forehead against the steering wheel. Mrs. Martinez, Emily's babysitter, was probably worried sick by now. She always insisted Sarah call if she was running late, but without a working phone, there was no way to let her know what had happened. Emily would be scared too. At 10 years old, she tried to act grown-up, but Sarah knew her daughter hated when she worked late shifts. "Think, Sarah, think." She sat up straight and looked around. The nearest gas station was at least 2 miles back. In this rain, walking wasn't a good option. She'd be soaked in seconds, and the road was dangerous at night. A car zoomed past, spraying water onto her windshield. Sarah flicked on her hazard lights and stepped out into the rain. Maybe someone would stop to help. The cold water immediately soaked through her diner uniform, and her name tag, "Sarah, happy to serve you," became a blurry smudge. 3 more cars passed by. Sarah waved her arms, trying to flag them down, but they just sped up. She couldn't blame them. Who would stop for a stranger on a dark road at midnight? In the distance, another pair of headlights appeared. Sarah raised her arms again, not expecting much. To her surprise, the vehicle, a large black SUV, slowed down. Hope fluttered in her chest as its brake lights glowed red through the rain. The SUV pulled onto the shoulder about 20 feet ahead of her car. Sarah hesitated. She'd heard plenty of stories about people who pretended to help stranded drivers, but something about the way the SUV had stopped not too close, giving her space, made her feel a little better. The driver's door opened, and a tall figure stepped out into the rain. Very tall, Sarah noticed, probably well over 6 feet. He wore dark jeans and a black jacket with the collar turned up against the rain. "Car trouble?" The man's voice was smooth and articulate, with a hint of warmth that immediately put her at ease. He stayed by his SUV, letting Sarah decide if she wanted to approach. "Yes," Sarah called back, trying to sound confident. "It just died on me. I think it might be the engine, but I don't know much about cars." The man nodded and walked closer, his steps careful on the wet pavement. As he got nearer, Sarah could see his face better in the glow of the hazard lights. He looked to be in his early 60s, with salt and pepper hair and kind, intelligent eyes. Something about him seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked, stopping a respectful distance away. Sarah nodded gratefully. "Please, I need to pick up my daughter from the babysitter's, and my phone's dead." The man pulled out a small flashlight from his jacket pocket and peered under the hood. After a few minutes of inspection, he straightened up and shook his head. "Looks like your timing belt's gone. That's not something we can fix here." He wiped rain from his face. Where's your daughter's babysitter? About 15 minutes away in Oak Park, Sarah said, wrapping her arms around herself to stay warm. The man seemed to think for a moment. I can give you a ride if you'd like, or I can call a tow truck for you, whatever makes you more comfortable. Sarah looked at her dead car, then at the dark road stretching out ahead. Emily was waiting. Mrs. Martinez was probably worried, and something in this stranger's manner made her feel safe. The way he kept his distance, offered options, didn't pressure her. A ride would be wonderful, if it's not too much trouble, she said finally. I'm Sarah Thompson. The man smiled, and again Sarah had that nagging feeling she should know him from somewhere. No trouble at all. Sarah, He paused for just a second. You can call me Barry. As they walked to his SUV, Barry pulled out a phone. Let me call my friend who owns a repair shop. He's the best mechanic in Chicago, and he owes me a favor. We can have your car towed there tonight. Sarah started to protest. She couldn't afford an expensive mechanic, but Barry was already dialing. She heard him greet someone named Tony and explain the situation, giving precise directions to her car. The inside of the SUV was warm and dry. The leather seats were softer than anything Sarah had sat on in years. As Barry pulled back onto the road, she noticed a small framed photo on his dashboard, a picture of him with what looked like his family, but it was too dark to make out clearly. So, Barry, Sarah said, keeping her eyes on the road, tell me about your daughter. Sarah smiled, feeling herself relax a little. Emily's 10. She's the smartest, kindest kid you could imagine. Works so hard at everything she does. She paused, then added, she loves learning. Actually, studies for hours every night, even though we can't afford tutoring or extra programs. Barry nodded, and something in his expression changed, a flash of interest, maybe even recognition, but it was gone so quickly Sarah thought she might have imagined it. As they drove through the rainy night, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this chance encounter was somehow important. She just didn't know why yet. The dashboard clock read 12:03 a.m. In 15 minutes, she'd be hugging Emily, apologizing to Mrs. Martinez, and probably never seeing this kind stranger again. Just another moment of kindness in a big city. Sarah had no way of knowing that this rainy night was just the beginning, that 3 years from now, she'd look back on this car ride and finally understand why Barry had seemed so familiar, and why a broken-down car on a rainy night would change her daughter's life forever. The SUV's headlights cut through the rain as they turned onto Oak Park's tree-lined streets. Sarah sat up straighter, recognizing Mrs. Martinez's neighborhood. She glanced at Barry, who was humming quietly to himself, his hands resting easily on the steering wheel. It's the yellow house on the right, Sarah said, pointing to Mrs. Martinez's small bungalow. A warm light glowed in the front window, and Sarah could see Emily's silhouette pacing back and forth. Barry pulled into the driveway, keeping the engine running. Would you like me to wait here while you get your daughter? Oh, you don't have to, Sarah started to say, but Barry shook his head. It's late and it's still pouring. Let me make sure you both get home safe. Something in his voice reminded Sarah of her father, that same gentle insistence on helping others. She nodded gratefully and hurried through the rain to Mrs. Martinez's front door. Before she could knock, the door flew open. Emily stood there in her oversized Chicago Bulls t-shirt, her curly hair wild from hours of worried fingers running through it. Mom! Emily threw herself into Sarah's arms. We were so worried. Mrs. Martinez was about to call the police. Mrs. Martinez appeared behind Emily, her face tight with concern. Sarah, gracias a Dios. What happened? I'm so sorry, Sarah said, hugging Emily tight. My car broke down and my phone was dead, but a kind stranger stopped to help. He's giving us a ride home. Mrs. Martinez peered past them at the SUV in her driveway. A stranger. Sarah, are you sure that's safe? It's okay, Sarah assured her, though she understood the worry. He seems trustworthy. And honestly, I didn't have many options. After paying Mrs. Martinez and gathering Emily's backpack, they headed to the SUV. Barry had stepped out and opened the back door for them, rain dripping from his broad shoulders. Emily stopped short, staring up at him. Wow, she whispered, you're really tall. Are you famous or something? Sarah saw Barry's mouth twitch in what might have been a smile. Not exactly, he said simply. I hear you're quite the student yourself. Emily's eyes lit up. You told him about me? She asked Sarah. Your mom mentioned you like to learn, Barry said, helping them into the SUV. What's your favorite subject? I love reading and history, Emily said, bouncing slightly in her seat. Did you know that Abraham Lincoln was our 16th president and he was also really tall like you? He signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, which was super important for civil rights. Barry coughed slightly, adjusting his rearview mirror. Is that right? You know your history. Emily loves learning about presidents and important people, Sarah explained, squeezing her daughter's hand. She can tell you facts about just about every president we've ever had. The presidency is something special, Barry agreed, his voice careful and thoughtful. Where do you do most of your studying, Emily? Emily's excitement dimmed a little. Just at our kitchen table mostly, the library sometimes, but I study every day after school. Every day? Barry asked, and something in his tone made Sarah look at him more closely. There was an intensity in his eyes as he listened to Emily talk about learning. Every single day, Emily said proudly, even on weekends. Unless Mom makes me take a break because I've been studying too long. I'm saving up for some better books, but right now I just use the ones from school. Sarah felt her chest tighten. She wished she could give Emily proper tutoring, better educational resources, all the opportunities other kids had. But between rent, food, and basic necessities, there was never enough left over. Take a right at the next light, Sarah directed, pushing away the guilty thoughts. Our apartment building is the brick one with the blue awning. As they drove, Emily chatted about her favorite historical figures, demonstrating her knowledge with enthusiasm. Barry listened intently, occasionally asking questions that showed he knew a lot about government and politics, more than just a casual interest would explain. The key to good leadership, he said at one point, is to always remember that you're serving the people, not the other way around. Every decision should be made with ordinary families in mind. Emily's eyes widened. That's exactly what my history teacher said about great presidents. But how do you know so much about leadership? Barry smiled mysteriously. I've had some experience with public service. They pulled up to Sarah's apartment building, but Barry wasn't done with his explanation. He turned in his seat to face Emily, his hands moving as he described the importance of education and civic engagement. Sarah watched in amazement as her normally fidgety daughter sat completely still, absorbing every word. The most important thing, Barry concluded, is believing in yourself and the power of education. Every great leader started somewhere. They all had days when things seemed impossible, when they wanted to quit, but they kept learning, kept growing. Like Barack Obama, Emily said eagerly. He became president even though some people said it would never happen, but he studied hard and never gave up. A strange expression crossed Barry's face, something between pride and amusement. That's right, he said quietly. He believed in the power of education and hard work. The rain had slowed to a drizzle as they got out of the SUV. Barry insisted on walking them to their building's entrance, his tall frame casting a long shadow in the streetlights. Thank you so much, Sarah said, reaching for her wallet. Please let me give you something for gas in your time. Barry held up his hand. No need, just help someone else when you get the chance. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. This is for Tony's Auto Shop. Tell them Barry sent you. They'll take good care of your car. Sarah took the card, noticing how simple it was, just the shop's name, address, and phone number. No fancy logos or designs, except for a tiny symbol in the corner that she couldn't quite make out in the dim light. I don't know how to thank you, she said, tucking the card into her pocket. Barry smiled, and for a moment Sarah felt that nagging familiarity again. Where had she seen that smile before? Keep studying, Emily, he said, nodding to her daughter. Remember what I said about the power of education? Emily beamed. I will. Maybe someday I'll be as inspiring as Barack Obama. Barry's smile widened just a fraction. Maybe you will. They watched as he walked back to his SUV, his steps confident despite the wet pavement. As he drove away, Emily tugged on Sarah's sleeve. Mom, did you notice how he talked about leadership? It was just like listening to a real politician. And did you see his hands? They moved just like when President Obama gives speeches. Sarah nodded, her mind working. There was something about Barry, the way he carried himself, the way he talked about public service, how he'd hesitated before giving his name, but she was too tired to puzzle it out tonight. As they climbed the stairs to their third-floor apartment, Emily was still talking about education and leadership, but Sarah was thinking about the business card in her pocket and how tomorrow she'd have to figure out how to pay for car repairs she couldn't afford. She had no idea that when she walked into Tony's auto shop the next day, she'd discover the first of many mysterious acts of kindness that would follow them for the next 3 years. And she certainly didn't know that the simple business card in her pocket held a clue to Barry's true identity, a clue that would only make sense much later, when all the pieces finally came together. The next morning, Sarah stood outside Tony's auto shop, clutching the business card Barry had given her. The shop looked much nicer than she'd expected, clean and professional, with a row of luxury cars parked in the service area. Her heart sank. This place was way out of her budget. "Can I help you?" A mechanic in a crisp blue uniform approached, wiping his hands on a rag. "I hope so," Sarah said, trying to sound confident. "My car broke down last night, and a friend recommended this place." She held out the business card. "He said to mention his name, Barry." The mechanic's eyes widened slightly as he took the card. "Oh, you're Barry's friend, Tony," he called over his shoulder. "Got someone here Barry sent." A stocky man with salt and pepper hair emerged from the office. He had kind eyes and wore a Chicago White Sox cap. "Barry sent you?" Tony asked, studying Sarah with interest. "He called last night about a broken timing belt." Sarah nodded. "But I should warn you, I'm not sure I can afford Dash." Tony waved his hand dismissively. "Don't worry about that. Any friend of Barry's is family here. We'll take care of everything." "Everything?" Sarah blinked. "But the timing belt alone must cost Dash." "It's handled," Tony said firmly. "Barry's got an account with us. Been bringing his cars here since the early 2000s. He smiled at Sarah's confused expression. "Let's just say he's a very loyal customer who likes to help people out." As Tony led her to the office to fill out paperwork, Sarah noticed the walls were covered in political memorabilia, photos of various Chicago politicians, newspaper clippings from elections, and campaign buttons from different years. Most prominent was a large framed photo from what looked like an election night celebration. "You're really interested in politics," she observed. Tony grinned. "You could say that. Been following Chicago politics since the 80s. He pointed to the framed photo. "That was from a very special election night. One of the proudest moments in Chicago history." Sarah squinted at the photo. It showed a crowd of celebrating people, but something about one figure in the center seemed familiar, though she couldn't place it. Over the next few weeks, Sarah noticed other small changes. Emily came home from school with news about a new after-school tutoring program, completely free and staffed by volunteer teachers from the University of Chicago. When Sarah asked about it, the principal mentioned it was funded by an anonymous donor who believed in educational equity. Then there was the mysterious appearance of new books in Emily's school library, advanced texts on history, government, and leadership that seemed perfectly suited to her interests. The librarian claimed they were donations but couldn't say from whom. "Mom," Emily said one evening as she worked on her homework, "do you think angels are real?" Sarah looked up from her sewing. "Angels? Why do you ask?" "Well," Emily said thoughtfully, "sometimes it feels like we have one watching over us, like someone's making sure I get everything I need to learn and grow, not just the stuff, but the opportunities to expand my mind." Sarah thought about Barry, about Tony's knowing smiles, about all the mysterious educational help that had appeared since that rainy night. "Maybe we do have an angel," she said softly, "an education angel." Emily giggled. "A really tall angel who knows everything about leadership and public service." Sarah's hands froze on her sewing. Really tall, knows everything about leadership. The political memorabilia at Tony's shop, the way Barry had talked about serving the people. But before her mind could connect the dots, Emily's pencil rolled off the table, and as Sarah helped her pick up her scattered papers, she noticed one was a printout about Barack Obama's presidency. On the page was a familiar-looking photo of Obama speaking at a podium, his hand gesturing in that distinctive way, the same way Barry had moved his hands when talking about leadership that rainy night. Sarah's heart began to race, but Emily's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Mom, there's going to be some special visitors at our school next week, real political scientists from the University of Chicago." The moment slipped away, the almost revelation fading like a dream upon waking. Sarah wouldn't think about that gesture, that familiar way of speaking, again until much later when everything finally made sense. For now, she just hugged her daughter, marveling at how far they'd come since that rainy night, not knowing that the biggest surprise, the true identity of their guardian angel, was still waiting to be discovered. 3 years had passed since that rainy night. Emily, now 13, stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting her best dress shirt. Her acceptance letter to the city's most prestigious academic program gleamed on her desk, a full scholarship she'd earned through hard work and mysterious support that had appeared just when she needed it most. "Mom," she called out, "have you seen my portfolio? The one with all my academic achievements?" Sarah smiled as she entered the room, the folder in question sitting right on Emily's desk under her favorite poster of great American presidents. "Right here, sweetie," she handed Emily the folder, noticing how her daughter's hands trembled slightly with excitement. "Nervous about tomorrow?" Sarah asked. Emily took a deep breath. "A little. They said there's going to be a very special guest speaker, someone who's inspired millions of people through public service." Sarah thought about all the mysterious opportunities that had appeared over the past 3 years, the tutoring programs, the scholarship applications that seemed to complete themselves, the educational resources that arrived just when Emily needed them most. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat at their small kitchen table, sorting through old papers and memories. At the bottom of a stack, she found something that made her heart skip, the old business card from Barry. The edges were worn, but that tiny symbol in the corner was clearer now in the kitchen light. It was a simple logo, the presidential seal. Sarah's mind raced back through 3 years of mysterious kindness, and suddenly everything began to make sense. But before she could fully process the revelation, her phone buzzed with a text from Emily's school. "Tomorrow's assembly moved to the University of Chicago. Please arrive at 9 a.m. sharp. Very important." The next morning dawned clear and bright. As they walked into the university's grand auditorium, Emily fidgeted with her portfolio, the same one that had been mysteriously enhanced with letters of recommendation from professors she'd never met. The auditorium was packed with students, parents, and faculty. On stage stood a podium with the presidential seal, and Sarah's heart began to race as all the pieces of the puzzle finally started falling into place. "Ladies and gentlemen," the dean announced, "please welcome our special guest, the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama." The crowd erupted in applause as a tall, familiar figure walked onto the stage. Emily gasped, her portfolio slipping from her fingers, because there, standing at the podium with that same gentle smile from a rainy night 3 years ago, was Barry. But he wasn't just Barry anymore. Sarah's mind flashed to every mysterious kindness, every educational opportunity, every moment when help had appeared just when they needed it most. Barack Obama, former President of the United States, was looking directly at them, that same warm smile from the night he'd stopped to help a stranded mother and her education-loving daughter. As he began to speak about the power of education and the importance of helping others, Sarah felt the world spin slightly. The final piece of the puzzle had clicked into place. Their guardian angel hadn't just been anyone, it had been the President of the United States, quietly watching over them, ensuring that Emily's love of learning could flourish, all because of a chance encounter on a rainy Chicago night. And now, 3 years later, as Emily sat in that auditorium listening to her hero speak about hope, change, and the power of education, she had no idea that the man on stage was the same person who had given them a ride home that stormy evening when everything changed. But Sarah knew, and as Barack Obama's eyes met hers across the crowded auditorium, his slight nod confirmed what she'd finally figured out. Sometimes angels don't have wings. Sometimes they're former presidents who believe in the power of kindness, education, and giving every child a chance to succeed. And sometimes, the most extraordinary journeys begin with the simplest acts of compassion on a rainy night in Chicago.